to impact signals.
The Daily Eye for Social Impact Briefing.
It's Tuesday, May 19, 2026. This is episode 56, and today we're zooming in on tools and platforms what practitioners can actually pick up and use this week. I'm Charlie.
We'll be hit by compound shocks. 5 stories, 5 different layers of the stack. Let's get into it.
First up, Rapidsus, the emergency response platform, put out a piece this week framing how they're approaching AI in 9/11 dispatch and disaster forecasting.
What's their angle?
Extremes. 2 big buckets. First, AI that fuses sensor data and caller signals so dispatchers get a clear picture before a unit rolls. Second, early warning systems pulling from weather, infrastructure, and IoT feeds to flag emerging disasters before they spread.
The interesting thing about Rapidsus is they sit between 9/11 centers and tech vendors, so whatever they ship doesn't just stay in a lab, it lands in actual dispatch consoles within weeks.
They were also explicit on the threat model. Their line was AI itself isn't the threat, how it's used is. Extremes. That's a useful framing if you're a county emergency manager trying to evaluate vendor pitches right now.
A practical takeaway for practitioners: when a vendor pitches you AI tooling, ask them how they handle false positives. That's where the real cost lives. A false flag in dispatch is a unit out of position when a real call comes in.
Extremes. Story 2, a piece from Tech Policy Press making a sharp point about AI detection tools and climate disinformation.
Exactly.
Extremes. Almost every deepfake detector on the market today was trained on faces and voices. But climate disinformation isn't faces. It's fabricated satellite imagery, fake flood photos, doctored before and after shots of forests and coastlines.
And the existing detectors just don't see it.
Right. The author argues we need detection trained on environmental signatures, light scatter water patterns, vegetation textures, sensor fingerprints from real satellites.
For NGOs and climate journalists doing verification work, the immediate takeaway is don't trust a generic deepfake detector on environmental media. And if you're a builder, this is an open gap. There's room for a purpose-built climate media authenticator that doesn't exist yet.
Extremes. It also has real policy stakes. Doctor damage imagery could swing loss and damage claims with the next COPE or distort attribution after a major storm. Extremes. Third story, the Center for Disaster Protection has launched something called Labs. It's a portfolio of innovative financing solutions for how countries prepare and pay for disasters.
This is a disaster risk financing world.
Extremes. Exactly. Think parametric insurance, anticipatory action triggers, contingent credit lines that fire before a crisis peaks instead of after. Labs is essentially a sandbox where governments and humanitarian agencies can pilot new instruments.
We'll be hit by compound shocks because the traditional model, wait for the disaster, then appeal for funds, is breaking under climate frequency. And AI fits directly into trigger design. The hardest question in parametric insurance is when exactly should the payout fire? That's a modeling problem.
Extremes. And the Labs program publishes what works and what doesn't, which is rare in this space.
For finance ministry staff, humanitarian leads, or anyone designing anticipatory action, the case studies on that site are concrete, not theoretical. Worth a bookmark this week.
Story 4. Nokia published a piece on resilient digital lifelines. The argument: when a disaster hits, the network is the lifeline.
And when the network goes, every AI tool we just spent 3 praising stops working.
Exposed to climate extremes. Right? Nokia walks through hardening strategies, mesh fallback, satellite backhaul, edge compute that keeps running when the cloud is unreachable. The framing is that resilience has to be designed in, not bolted on after a failure.
This is the unsexy infrastructure layer underneath everything else. We'll be hit by compound shocks if you're designing an AI-driven early warning system and you haven't thought through what happens when the cell network drops in hour 1 of a hurricane. You don't have a system, you have a demo.
There's also an equity angle they lean into.
Yes, informal settlements in rural areas tend to lose connectivity first and recover last. We'll be hit platform that fails gracefully in those conditions is a platform that actually serves the people most exposed to disasters. That's a procurement criterion humanitarian agencies should be writing into RFPs.
Extremes. Last this one's a reality check. A new paper on Arxiv titled The Hardness of Achieving Impact in AI for Social Impact Research.
Tell me this isn't another paper about a benchmark.
Extremes. The opposite. The authors look at why so many AI do for good projects produce papers but never produce deployments. The patterns they find: misaligned incentives between researchers, NGOs, and the communities being studied. Benchmarks that don't generalize, and no operational owner after the grant ends.
This is the conversation every program officer in this space should be having. It's not enough to fund the model. So we'll be hit by compound shocks to fund the maintenance, the data pipeline, the handoff to the people who'll actually run it on a Tuesday at 3 in the morning.
Extremes. They propose some concrete moves, longer engagement horizons, co-authorship with implementing partners, evaluation criteria that include deployment metrics, not just accuracy on a held outset.
So we'll be hit by compound shocks for anyone building tools in this space, and that's most of our audience. This paper is required reading. It names the failure modes most of us have lived through but rarely write down.
Exposed to climate extremes, so zoom out. 5 store of layers, the dispatcher console at Rapidsos, the climate media detector gap, the disaster finance sandbox at the Center for Disaster Protection, the network resilience layer at Nokia, and the research to deployment pipeline that the Arxiv paper is trying to fix.
Will be hit compound shocks. Pick the one closest to your work and move on it this week, not next quarter.
Extremes. If you want links to everything we covered today, head to Impact Signals. Episode 56 has all the sources. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss tomorrow's briefing.